Hello there. So I finally remembered to come back and do my live feed. I think that's a good example of our brains working, the system one and system two ways of thinking, in that normally I don't have to think about when my live feed is. That's my system one, I think, can just carry on, and I turn up on Thursdays at 9:15. But because I changed the time, I forgot. I had to use my system two, but my system two was obviously busy elsewhere, and so I completely forgot about the live feed. So here I am, and what I thought I'd talk today is about mindfulness and containing those knee-jerk reactions. You'll see that I have a blog about mindfulness, and I just wanted to explain a bit more about the principles behind it. So, sometimes when someone says something and you just react to it, and you think about it afterwards and you think, I wish I hadn't got cross, or, I hadn't reacted in the particular way that I did. Why do we do that? Why do we let our emotions take control and find it really difficult to keep our emotions under control? And the reason is it's really very simple, in that it's the way the brain works and the messages in the brain. But the messages to the amygdala, which is sort of part of the emotional processing part of the brain, they take about 100 milliseconds to reach that part of our brain, whereas the more sensible part of our brain, which is higher up, it takes about 300 milliseconds for a message to reach that part of our brain. And so it's easy to start reacting before our brain, the thinking part of our brain, swings into action. And so what we want to try and do is to give ourselves time, really, give ourselves time before we react, so that our thinking part of our brain can come into play. And it's very easy for those of us who have been maybe had a difficult childhood, perhaps being exposed to things that aren't terribly helpful for children to be exposed to. People like that are living with a high level of threat reactivity in their bodies. And the Americans have done a big study called the Adverse Childhood Experience Study, and they found that something like 65% of their sample, which was 17,500 people, had actually had some sort of adverse childhood experience. And that meant that they are more reactive to threat. So to be reactive to whatever upsets us is actually quite a common thing, and I don't think that we should be cross with ourselves for the times that we are reactive. Hi there, I can see you've joined. Anyway, so how do we create some space for ourselves so that we don't always react from a place of anxiety or stress or anger or fear? So the thing to do is to be aware of what's going on, and in the same way that the messages reach the emotional part of our brain really quickly, it also means that our body starts to react, because our amygdala sends out hormones, so it sends out adrenaline, so our bodies get ready to fight or flight. And if we're aware of what's actually going on in our bodies, that gives us a chance to sort of think to ourselves, right, I'm beginning to feel under threat here. And it just gives us a bit of breathing space. So we can sort of notice when we're feeling anxious, we can notice when we're feeling annoyed, we can notice when we're feeling angry, just by what's going on in our bodies. And if you become familiar with your feelings, what your physical feelings are, that gives you like an early warning system before something comes out of your mouth, basically. And believe me, I know the theory, but I don't always practice it. But mindfulness actually helps us to be aware of what's going on in our body. One of the things that you do when you're being mindful is, if you're doing this on a formal basis, is you're actually practicing, you're listening to what's going on in your body. You're doing something called a body scan, and you just practice when you're calm, but you begin to notice what's going on in your body, and you begin to take notice, you get into the habit of what's going on in your body, and then that helps you when you're in those sort of pressurized situations. You actually know where you're at when the particular sort of event happens. So mindfulness is really, really helpful from that point of view, because it just helps us to be more controlled in terms of, we're able to take a step back from our immediate reaction. And it's just a really effective way of learning how to be calmer, really. So I've put some information about that in my blog. There's a little bit more generally about what mindfulness is about, but I thought I'd share that today. So thanks so much for watching and for joining me, and I'll be back again next week. Thanks very much. Bye.